Hey everyone, it's Liset here from Sweet Girl Farms. So today we're going to be planting some dahlias, and I want to go ahead and show you the variety, which it won't really matter, but they're from Longfield Gardens. And so this was actually a great find at our local Costco, and you can see the beautiful colors. We got 3 different kinds, and we're going to plant them now. Right now it's January 31st, 2024, and we are actually getting a very early start to our dahlia planting. Typically I plant this in the early spring to mid-spring so that we can have a fall harvest, but this year my challenge is to start things a little bit sooner rather than later, and I'm hoping that this planting goes well. We have our row here that we already have dahlias in there, and some of them are actually already starting to sprout out of the ground, and it's really encouraging to see them already sprout from the ground, because that means that the weather has been playing a great factor in that, meaning that the weather has been ideal for these dahlias to start coming up. And when I noticed that, that's why I got encouraged to start planting these right now. So that's what I'm going to do today. Okay, so we already have dahlias planted here, but what I'm gonna do is I'm going to start laying our tubers along here so that we can space them out evenly. And then I know that I had some gaps here last summer, so I'm just gonna go off of memory. That's not the best tactic, but I'm gonna do that, and I'll show you up close exactly how the tubers look. Just gonna open them right up, and then I'll get you a close-up. Okay, so let's show you what the tubers look like when you receive them. I'm noticing that this particular company sends you the entire root ball tuber, and I'll explain. And then this is coming from Longfield Gardens. So not all companies will send you the entire tuber like you see here. Some companies will only do part of the tuber, so you might get like a little nub. And just want to distinguish that between companies, because not all companies will send you the same product or like the same presentation. I appreciate when a company sends it like this, because you get basically more opportunities to get some sprouting, some production from a single tuber. When it's a single piece, it's more risky in my opinion, because I really have to take care of that single piece of tuber to make sure I don't kill the plant and thus affecting my production. So this is how the tubers come in. I'll show you when you get it out of the bag. It'll probably come with some type of compost, some type of mulch. And then when you dig it out of the bag, the next thing is to identify where the top is. So in this case, we look for the branch that gave the previous year, the production from the previous year. So this is the stem here. And these other ones, sometimes it's hard to tell, but here is the stem right here. So we have to identify what side is the top and which one is the bottom, so that we know how to actually plant the tuber. And then just be careful when you're handling the tubers so that the nubs don't break off, because this is what sustains the plant, and then the roots form from here, and this little nub here will start to produce eyes, and then the number of eyes, that's how many stems will prop up and give you some type of flower. So just be careful when you're handling these so that you don't break them off. And this is the overview, like I'm saying, of the tuber. So now you have an idea of what a dahlia tuber looks like. And okay, I want to give a close-up of what the stem looks like so that you can distinguish it. So all of these little nubs will be facing down, and this stem here is what will help you identify what part of the tuber is the top and then what's the bottom. So this is how we'll actually plant it. We're going to keep all of these little nubs facing downward, and then the stem will be propped up so that we facilitate the plant forming the stems through the ground. And then another example here, it becomes a little hard, but I thought initially this was the top, but that's just another nub. This is actually right here. That's actually the stem from the previous year. So this is my top. If I go here to the bottom, I wouldn't be able to find a stem here. So that's how you know. There's that. We can show it with this one, same thing. You find where the previous stem was, right here. If we go to the bottom here, we can just see all the little nubs. Many times the packaging already gives you a lot of information as to the spacing between each tuber. So for example, this one, it's saying plant spacing of a distance of 20 inches. That sounds just about right. It's like a standard spacing for dahlias. Dahlias do take up a lot of room, and you want to give them enough space so that their roots are able to develop well. And so my next step is to space out my tubers in the row that I want them, and then I'll come in and then just place them. At this point, I just eyeball it. I just eyeball 20 inches between each plant, but I would plant my next one here, and following that maybe over here. Some considerations is to work your ground really well. I laid down compost like 2 years ago, and I've let nature do its thing for those 2 years, but even when the compost was new, I planted into it, and it's helped my plants fairly well. The detail that I try to take care of the most is the watering. So you can tell that I have an irrigation tape here, and the irrigation tape has maybe like a 7-8 inch spacing of like where it's actually going to drip. So preferably I would leave the dahlia tuber next to one of these drip holes. Our summers do get very hot here in Central Valley, California, and during midsummer it can go above 100 degrees Fahrenheit for several days in a row, and that is where I notice dahlias tend to wilt, and their flowers still do well, but I prefer the dahlias to have the source of water really close by to them. So like I said, now we have the tubers spaced out nicely. Follow the directions in the packaging, but I think 20 inches between each dahlia tuber is like a good standard. So I'm gonna place those, and then I start to actually dig in the tubers into the ground. So let's do that. Okay, so I'm coming in here, kind of roughly cleaning out the area. Just throw in the extra mulch that was included. In this case, I am filling in parts of my row where I don't have anything, and as you can tell, there's a few onion plants here, and actually won't mind putting the dahlias in the mix here. So I'm gonna do that. This is something that's called interplanting, and totally doable. The onion roots won't affect the dahlias development. It'll work out perfectly fine. So this is a routine that I follow Like I said, this method is called interplanting, where you can bring in a mix of different plants into the same garden bed, and it works out really well. Okay, so we have the dahlia tubers here already spaced out. This might be a little less than 20 inches, honestly. Since it is a flower production for business, we do try to save space. But if you have the garden, your own garden, and you're not doing it for business necessarily, you can totally go with the 20-inch spacing, like the indications in the packet detailed out. So just pointing out the differences between what can be a flower production for business, but a flower production versus a flower production for your personal garden. Okay, so bringing in the shovel in here so that I can really dig in deeply. I don't like to discard this, so I'm gonna just put this out here. Shovel makes it super easy. Like I said, the soil, when you have nice fluffy soil, something that's easily to move around with, then it makes your life a lot easier. But you can tell I made that hole. I'll come in and measure, and the dahlia fits in there really nicely. Okay, so now let's give you the really details about how deep and how wide the hole is. Okay, so the hole itself is approximately 8 inches, and it is deep like 6 inches. When I bring in the tuber in here, you want to make sure that you leave enough space width-wise, and so that seems to be doing the trick right there. However, there's little nubs that are a little bit pointier, so what I just do is I'll come in here with my hands and do a little bit of scraping, just widening it up a little bit. I leave that soil there and then try again. Okay, there you go. That fits way better. And at this point, the stem is probably like 3 to 4 inches below the surface of the soil. And that is how wide and deep I'm going to give this tuber its new home. And then we come in here and then start covering. Like I said, I don't like to discard what I dig out, so what we dug out with the shovel is what I'll put back in here, start to even that surface up, and then do a few compressions here, tap in the soil. And as you can see, the soil is already moist. There's moisture in there because we've had rain, and we are going to receive rain tonight. If that weren't the case, then I would definitely start to turn on my irrigation tape to make sure that the root starts to get hydrated. But that is it. So that's the process we're going to continue. You can put a little stake, some type of label indication that this is where your dahlia tuber is, so that you know what is going to come up in this section of your garden. Or if you just want to have an indication, for me, that's what I would do. Put a little stake just so I know where not to dig, that there is already a tuber there. But then after that, I'm going to keep moving on with the rest of the dahlias. Already got a close-up of exactly the process I follow, always making sure that we keep this stem facing up. I keep the care of the dahlias pretty simple. After this, the only other thing that the dahlias receive, in all honesty, is just water. As long as I keep watering, monitoring for pests. What has helped the farm and the ecosystem is to bring in a lot of diversity. So we have a good variety of plants in this same field. And honestly, that's been the biggest advantage to fighting off pests and bringing in a lot of beneficials to take over the garden. I'm not saying that the farm is free of pests, but it has seen improvement once we started to mingle in different crops in the same field and in the same row. So I will say that interplanting has been a great advantage to our garden. With these tubers that are smaller, the hole won't be as deep or wide, but always making sure that it is nice and snugged in there, and pretty much just planting in like that. I keep my routine pretty simple. Pretty much putting in here. This one, the hole is going to be bigger because the tuber is bigger. Jumping in here to discuss a little bit more about pest and disease pressure and how I control that. In previous years, when I was first starting flower farming, I used neem oil as well as insecticidal soap. However, the best results for me have come from interplanting, so I'm happy to report that I haven't used any solutions to directly apply to my crops, and that is my best recommendation. I know I've repeated it like 3 or 4 times already, but that is what I used to use in the years that I had first began planting flowers and other vegetables in the same field. But the best results have been from increasing the diversity of plants in our farm. So that's one of the things that I wanted to highlight in terms of dahlia care. I do keep my routine pretty simple, and what I'm showing you here, I know it's not going to work for everyone, but it is how I do things here at the farm. After planting, these dahlias will start to produce in approximately 4 months or so. So that's how long you can anticipate your harvest to come in. I actually found a gopher hole right here. So I'm going to skip this portion of the row and keep moving on. I'm not going to plant anything here. And then we'll see if the gopher hole keeps going this way. Gophers are hard to combat. We do have traps for them, but they are pretty prevalent in our fields, and we do share a lot of our food and flowers with them. Gophers do like dahlias, unfortunately. Okay, don't find the hole here, so I'm going to plant one right here. I'm going to keep this one actually a little bit more surface level. Okay, and I'm going to take these a couple feet back in the row. So remember that you're in a hole about 6 inches deep. That's here. Okay, this one, yeah, 7 deep. I'm gonna have it around for. Press. Okay, so we are done planting our dahlia tubers. I try to streamline and keep the gardening process as simple as possible. It's for my flower production, for my business, so I also try to keep that as simple as possible. Like you saw me do, I planted the tubers, spaced them out accordingly. Because I want to have high volume production, I don't leave as much spacing as the recommended spacing is on the packages. but that is because it's a business perspective. If you're doing it for gardening, then I would follow the instructions on the packaging. Other than that, guys, it'll be a matter of maintaining, so making sure that I water or irrigate accordingly, depending on the weather. That can differ between every 2 days, every 3 days. It just depends on your weather conditions. I strategically planted the tubers right before our rainfall, so we are predicted to have a week's worth of rain. So everything was strategically done to catch that rainfall. And as a matter of fact, I already felt some sprinkles, so I'm really happy. And if anything, that just fine-tune everything to your region, to how your weather affects your garden. And from there on out, it'll be more learning how to control pests if they become a problem, how often to irrigate, and also making sure that the soil is loose enough for your dahlia tubers to be able to establish. Again, I didn't accomplish this as fast as it looks here in the video. It has taken me 2.5, 3 years to develop the soil to where the dahlia tubers can be kind of like set it and forget it type of deal. And then from here, I expect to have a production in 4 months or so. And if it comes later than that, I am totally okay. We are planting other things that will come around the same season, maybe give or take 2 weeks difference between each crop. But with that, I will leave you guys until the next video. If you guys have any suggestions or questions regarding this video or future topics that you want me to cover, please leave them in the comments down below, and hope to see you next time. Bye!